Hello, today I'd like to talk about Fallout 76. The game will soon be commencing its 10th season, and that will make the new Pitt expansion accessible. I've never played the game before, and I wanted to talk about my first impressions of what the game is like in 2022, from the perspective of someone who's a single player gamer. Special thanks go to Bethesda for the review key. Please click the link in the description for more information on the game. I've mentioned before in other videos that my gaming history is almost exclusively as a single player character, pun intended. I haven't covered them on YouTube, but I'm a pretty big fan of the Fallout series. Not as much as I am a fan of the Elder Scrolls games, but only by a tiny bit. The Fallout setting lends itself really well to portraying a struggle to survive. Humanity ekes out a living by scavenging the shattered remains of civilization. The environment is toxic, pretty much everything wants to kill you. You scratch out a living at first, but eventually prevail against the odds. That struggle is fundamentally why the games are so iconic. But I didn't pay too much attention to the release of Fallout 76. Primarily that was because it was meant to be multiplayer, and I'm not very interested in joining guilds, scheduling raids, and so on. I want to be able to play games when I want to, and for as long as I want to. Fighting other players doesn't interest me either. Online games tend to be very combat focused, and light on ways players can express themselves. Dialogue and quests are there as veneers, to direct you towards combat. These games tend to be more about the joy of getting new gear and using it in combat. Oh nice! Okay, so there is sneak attack. On top of that, the glitches that were memed to death, like those god rays, didn't help at all. Generally I wasn't drawn to the genre or the game. So why did I request a key for Fallout 76 then? The short answer is that I saw that there was going to be an expansion based on the Fallout 3, the Pitt expansion. The Pitt in Fallout 3 is an underrated expansion. It just doesn't seem to get the love like other parts of Fallout do, and I always thought it had a lot of potential. It was one area in Fallout games where large-scale industry was still taking place and could be a potential starting point for the revival of an advanced society. Similarly, the brutality and slavery taking place offers a fertile ground for storytelling and role-playing. Obviously the Fallout 76 version will differ from the Fallout 3 version, but I'm interested in how it's portrayed, who we meet, and what stories they have to say. It's intended for level 50 characters, so it will take me a while before I can experience it though. So far I've played 2 sessions on stream for a total of about 10 hours. I'm just a shade below level 10 and done a number of side missions. Nowhere near the 300 and 800 level characters I've seen other players using, and not enough to comment on the entire game, but enough to give you an informed first impression. If you've played Fallout 4, you'll recognize the visuals right away, because they're almost the same. So much so that I immediately fell back into the same old habits of looting everything, just as if I was playing the single player game. I recall that there was some furore about the lack of NPCs in the early release of the game, but that seems to have been changed. As soon as you step outside, you'll meet a couple of scavengers that will direct you to a bar, where you'll witness a standoff like in the Drumland bar in Fallout 4. There's many other locations and situations that remind you of the single player games. For example, one mission sends you to a hospital that looks very close to the hospital you find in Fallout 4. I expected some will see that as old hat, while others will enjoy the similarities. So far I fall into the latter category. I've enjoyed recognizing things from the earlier games. The game has main and side missions that you take part in, but just like the single player games, they seem to be entirely optional. There's a lot of places to explore, and you could just wander around looting and shooting your way up the levels. But missions do give you a lot more experience, so they're worth doing if your focus is on getting levels. The main quest seems less involved, but I should mention that I haven't progressed far enough to properly judge. Who's coming for me? You'll battle your regular dogs, mole rats, I missed, and ghouls. Hey, why there's so many of you? But the biggest enemy are the Scorched. They look like ghouls that have been left on the grill for a bit too long. Oh, what? Okay. But they use guns and behave pretty much like raiders. Oh shit, do not want. There's also creatures like dragons flying around that apparently cause humans to be turned into Scorched. 13, no, do not want. They're too high level for me to think about fighting them, but comments on the internet about them being Skyrim dragons seem about right. To battle these enemies, you'll have a variety of weapons that come straight out of Fallout 4. You have your machetes and other melee weapons, rusty pipe pistols, shotguns, and hunting rifles for range. Disassembling spare weapons at a workbench gives you a chance to learn new modifications that you can then apply to your weapons and make them more powerful. It's pretty much how it was in Fallout 4. It's pretty obvious that the developers deliberately aimed to mirror Fallout 4, and most game systems will be similar to what you know if you played the single player game. Generally the game has worked fine for me, no major glitches or bugs. The one graphical glitch that I've seen a few times is the dogs stop animating the legs for some reason. They still move and you can still hit them, the legs just stop moving. Scorched, ghouls, and other animals seem fine though, so it's kind of puzzling to see just the dogs doing that. Performance has generally remained consistently at 60 FPS, with an occasional dip in towns with lots of buildings. You can adjust graphical settings like shadows to keep things smoother if you want, so it doesn't seem a big deal. The map is quite large, and the areas are divided based on the levels of enemies you might meet. I pushed into a level 20 area while I was level 6, and died a few times. Okay, so you can take these guys, okay, that's pretty good. But you can still take out enemies with a well-placed sneak headshot, despite the level difference, so even higher level areas are still accessible. The fact that you can traverse the entire map of Appalachia by walking does a lot in immersing the player into the experience. Hearing random firefights in the distance as other players fight enhances the feeling of being in a living world, but at the same time you're not running into other players every 2 seconds. So the game world still does feel as if you were playing a single player game. Overall, the game does achieve its goal of reminding players of Fallout 4. The look and feel of the environment, the locations and looting, the guns and the modding, the combat. There's an unmistakable similarity between Fallout 76 and Fallout 4. A lot more than I expected before I played it in fact. But there's also a few major differences between Fallout 76 and the single player games. The biggest one is the attribute and perk system. You don't distribute special attribute points when you create your character. Instead you gain perk cards as you level, and on each level up you can choose to upgrade a card to gain a bigger benefit. Most cards seem to allow 3 upgrades, and they correspond to familiar perks like finding extra ammo when searching containers, doing more damage with a particular type of weapon, being able to carry more junk. Basically the same perks that exist in the single player games. Am I supposed to apply them here or something? You also have to apply the cards to your attributes in order to have the perks take effect. The interface is a bit tricky, and it took me until level 9 to realize that I was just upgrading the cards, but I wasn't actually applying them. Makes more sense once you become more familiar with it, but it does take some working out. Or maybe it was just me. These perk cards are gained randomly via a pack opening system after you reach a certain level. Whenever I see something chance based like that, the first thing I worry about is whether the system is aimed at enticing players into paying real life money for those cards. I'm happy to be able to say that I haven't seen anything that might suggest that so far. If you come from the single player games, it will seem strange and even downright weird to allocate special points as you go, rather than when creating your character. It basically means that all characters are the same. But on the other hand, the same system has the benefit that it allows you to readjust your character as you please without a fuss. You won't find yourself trapped by a bad build, it's just a matter of reassigning cards. As long as money doesn't get brought into this, it seems okay. The game does have a currency system, called atoms, that you can purchase with real money. It looks like you can spend them to buy cosmetics and some constructible buildings, but otherwise they have not been intrusive or necessary to playing the game. There's also a paid mode called Fallout First, that seems to provide extra benefits and access to exclusive areas. I don't know anything about it, and more importantly, I haven't had to know anything about it. It seems entirely optional, and that's a plus point in my book. Early in the game you're issued with a small device called a camp that allows you to enter construction mode. It's essentially Fallout 4's construction mode in settlements, but the big difference is that you can shift the location of your camp by paying a few caps, and it's meant to be deployed in unsettled areas. It's there to provide you with facilities like workbenches while you're adventuring. You can unlock new construction plans by finding them while exploring locations, which acts as an incentive to engage in the same scavenging that you did in the single player games. Unlike the single player games, loot does respawn, so if you need material, you can loot the same location over and over again, which means that while exploring new locations, you can focus on picking up the more important stuff and fighting enemies rather than looting junk. I haven't delved too much into the details of constructing a proper base, but it looks like you can build turrets, walls, and other defenses. so I expect that there might be scenarios where you have to defend your fort from enemies. Seeing hordes of ghouls get cut down by your well-placed settlement defenses in Fallout 4 was one of the highlights of the game to me, so hopefully Fallout 76 offers something along those lines. Maybe even the ability to combine camps into a proper fortress, but that might be wishful thinking. Once you reach level 5, you'll have the option of teaming up with or fighting other players. The system seems to default to players doing very little damage to other players, unless you both shoot at each other. Then it becomes a full PvP match. But until then, you can simply ignore players shooting at you. There's even a setting where you can simply disable any type of multiplayer interaction, so you can play exclusively as a single player. Big plus point that this is an option. So far my interactions with other players have been very friendly and positive. It seems that the game has a culture of high level players, gifting new players with things like free stim packs, which is pretty nice to see. The scarcity of players in each game world and the size of the map also means that you don't run into many players at all. This is very helpful in immersing players into the setting. Remember what the Fallout universe is. It's a nuclear wasteland where civilization has collapsed. People are struggling to cope by scavenging and exploring ruins. Now imagine that you run into hundreds of people every time you boot the game. That would be jarring to anyone familiar with the Fallout lore. And it's a big plus point that devs have spread players around. It really allows you to feel like you're playing a single player Fallout game. You've probably got the hint by now, but I really feel that Fallout 76 is the cousin of Fallout 4. So let's say you liked Fallout 4. Should you play Fallout 76? The simple answer is that if you like the looting and shooting aspects of Fallout 4, then you should play it. It plays basically the same from what I've seen so far. If you're looking for deep quests, like in the Far Harbor expansion, then I haven't seen anything that might come close to that. I may end up being pleasantly surprised later on, but to be frank, I wouldn't expect MMOs to have a deep quests, dialogue, or a lot of choice in the first place. If you're looking for a continuation of the Fallout 4 experience, my experience so far is that Fallout 76 definitely fits the bill. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.